Hi everybody, this video is going to be my scroll saw unboxing. Story behind this is I got this past Mother's Day from my husband. Thank you honey for the gift, and I have yet to open it. The weather had been too hot and I've been busy, you know, all the excuses. But I thought, you know, I really want to make some items for Christmas with wood, and why not go ahead, get this unboxed so we can maybe make something for Christmas. But I've got the Skill scroll saw. Variable speed scroll saw is the one that I got. So let's see if I can do this without my husband's help. I have never used a scroll saw. So if you are looking for a how to use video on a scroll saw, this is not the place. Because like I said, I have never used one. This video is bound to be a hot mess. But you know, that's okay. We all have to learn somewhere, and I am learning, just learning. Maybe I might need your help to pull the styrofoam off. All right. Look, it's got a little foot pedal just like you would use for a sewing machine. How cute is that? All right, so I'm gonna have to read these directions, think a little to figure out what to do. So I'm gonna pause the video. Okay, so I've got my templates. I just printed these off the computer, but I figured best way to get them transferred on there would be just to use some of this tracing paper. I'm gonna get these traced on here and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got everything drawn out. Let's see, we're gonna do a globe, a medium-sized cutting board, I guess, or a larger cutting board. And then I'm gonna do these smaller cutting boards. And of course, the first one I drew, it was all wonky, so. We are going to try that. So I'm going to do this cutting board first. It seems like it might be the easiest. So after I cut those out, I did go ahead and use my sander and I sanded them smooth, especially along the edges. And here is what we have. And I must say, I don't think I did too bad of a job for my first time, but I'm going to drill some holes in the top of the cutting boards. And I do end up not using the circular one. I'm actually going to save that for another video. I'm going to start with the globe. I think this turned out so good. I'm really proud of myself, especially doing a circular one for the first time. But I'm going to grab the trimmings mold from IOD, some clay, and I'm going to cast the one right in the middle, and I'm going to need 2 of those. Now, when working with clay, you want to make sure that you knead it because you want to warm that clay up very well. And you want to put some cornstarch in there to help keep that clay from sticking to your mold. Once I've got those popped up, I will grab the Tight Bond Quick and Thick and just apply that, smoothing that out with my finger, making sure I get it along the edges. And then I'm going to drape that and tap it in gently. You don't want to distort the clay since it is still wet, and just go around that top edge with both of them. My second piece came up just a hair too long, so I will just grab a little sculpting spatula. I believe I picked these up from the Dollar Tree in a little package, and I will just cut that off. I'm going to let that sit for about 5 minutes before I proceed, and I'm going to grab the color Casement. This is a Fusion all-in-one paint, and I am going to paint this piece in its entirety, front, back, sides, everywhere. Now I'm going to grab the color Red Velvet from Paint Couture. This is a beautiful true red color. And on the casting that we made on the edge here, every other little section I'm going to paint with this red color, like you would see on a candy cane. Now while that's drying, I'm going to grab some 12mm half beads. I'm going to grab that color Casement and the Red Velvet, and every other bead I will paint in the white, and every other bead I will paint in the red. And I like to put these half beads down on some painter's tape. It just keeps them from rolling around. It makes it so much easier. And we'll set those aside to dry. And I've got this color Cloudless. This is from Apple Barrel, and I'm just going to squirt it in there and paint the top part of the globe in this color. This is such a pretty sky blue color, and I absolutely love it. We'll just work that all around, and when I get to the bottom, I just kind of try to shape it with the globe. And it's okay if it's not perfect, because we're going to be putting those beads down to divide the top and bottom section anyway. And this video is on the What Would You Make collaboration playlist, and this month I am the guest host, and I would like to thank Brenda at Rustic and Lace DIY and Christine from Divine Designs for having me as the guest host. I really love this playlist. I haven't been on it in a little while. I've just been so busy, so I'd like to welcome all of you to the playlist. Look at my description box. You will find the links to both of our hosts and also to the rest of the playlist. Give everybody some love and go check out their videos, see what they come up with. I'm sure it will be fantastic. And again, thank you, Brenda and Christine, for having me this month. I truly appreciate it. So let's get back to our video. And this is what it's going to look like once we get it all painted in that blue color, and I will dry it down with my heat gun. I like this Turbo Tacky Glue. It works very well and very quick. So that's what I'm going to use to adhere these half beads right where the top and the bottom half are meeting. Got these little wood pieces from the Dollar Tree. I picked up, I believe, last year, and I'm also going to be using some of those little wood snowflakes. But I want to use the house and the trees for a snow globe, and you can see the problem. The trees are just a little too long. I'm just going to grab my little tin snips and just trim that off, and then I'm going to make sure it's going to fit. And I was like, yeah, that's enough, but I'm going to flip it over and it's going to be perfect. Now you can paint these any way you want, but I am going to take some gel stain and stain up the house. And I do this with just a baby wipe, and I dip my baby wipe into the stain because I don't want it too terribly dark. I stain all around the house with the exception of the garage and the chimney. And I'm just going to paint those two sections in a red color. And this is the Red Velvet by Paint Couture. I've got this beautiful green color called Opulence from Paint Couture, and that's what I will be using to paint the trees. And I paint all of the branches in this color. I went back and used that stain to do the trunks, and I painted the snowy mountain part in the white color. And then I also used the white color for the little wood snowflakes. Now I've got this snow tack, and before I glue these down, I just wanted to add a little bit of snow to the roof of the house, some of the branches of the trees. You know, it's got to look like a little winter scene because this is a winter snow globe. And once I get that snow tack on, I will just use that Turbo Tacky Glue to adhere to our piece. And I did have to clamp the tree down just to get it to stick while it was drying, but I will grab some more of that snow tack and add the ground snow. And this was so fun just to add that snow and watch this piece come to life. But you add your snow wherever you want. I do believe that at one time Dollar Tree maybe had some wood snow globes, so maybe you can find one there if you aren't wanting to make your own. So be sure to check that out. But I'm just going to add that snow all along the bottom, being careful and mindful not to get that snow past those beads. Then after I get that ground snow on, I'm just going to take some white glitter and sprinkle around the snow. It'll just give it a little bit more of an icy appearance. Next, I'm just going to grab the end of one of my paint brushes in some white paint, and I'm just going to apply little dots here and there just to make it look like it's snowing. Now, I picked these little tag holders up off of Amazon, which will be linked in my description box. And I'm just going to place that right in the middle on the very bottom. And I didn't show it on camera, but I just added a little tag in there that says home, which you will see in the finale at the end of the video. I'm going to grab my gel stain, and along the edge of the bottom, I'm going to apply that. I just needed to break up that white a little bit, and then this project will be complete, and you will see the finale at the end. Now let's move on to the cutting boards. I grabbed some decoupage paper. This is from Decoupage Central. I actually picked these up on Whatnot. There was a lady on there selling them, and I grabbed some sheets because I always wanted to try this decoupage paper. And this sheet with the sheets, I'm just going to grab the largest one, and that's what I'll be using for this. And I've got the color Aviary also from DIY Paint that I will be using, but I'm first going to cut down the section that I need. And once I get that cut, I'm just going to lay it down and kind of figure out how this is going to lay on the board. And I'm just going to cut little slits at the handle, so when I decoupage, it just makes it easier for me to sand off. And then I'm going to set that paper aside, grab the color Aviary, and I'm going to paint along the edges and also the back side of the cutting board in this color. Then I'll grab the color Crinoline from DIY Paint, and I will paint the front side of the cutting board in that color. And as far as on the handle, I am only going to go so far up as far as where my paper is going to be stopping. And I'm using a lighter color on the front because I really want that design on that decoupage paper to show through. Now, I went ahead and misted my paper with some water. This is supposed to help the paper move a little bit easier with those fibers, and it did seem to help. So I will probably be using this method depending on the paper in the future. But I'm going to use clear liquid patina from DIY, and that will be my decoupage medium. Of course, feel free to use Mod Podge or whatever decoupage medium you have on hand. And I am going to apply that using my little brush from the DIY Struggle. And these paintbrushes are amazing. If you guys decoupage a lot, you might want to give these a shot. And the price point is spot on. But I'm going to do this in sections. I will start with the top half, and then I'm going to dab that paper down, just making sure to get all the wrinkles out. I started using a little paper towel, but then I did revert to using the plastic. I just wanted to make sure I didn't tear the paper. And then I will proceed to do the same thing to the bottom, making sure to get up under that paper so we don't have any gaps. And just tap it down. I'm going to set that aside to dry, and I'm going to grab the smaller cutting board, and I will use this rice paper right here, this beautiful cardinal. I'm going to use the same color, the Crinoline, to paint the front side of this cutting board. And once that paint is dried, use the DIY liquid patina and decoupage that down. And while that's drying, we'll move back to the larger cutting board. And I'm just going to use a fingernail file and file off that excess paper around the edges. I couldn't find my little finger sander, so this was the next best thing. And I've got plenty of these things, so might as well use them. And when you're doing this, you definitely want to make sure you go in a downward motion, because going up, you take the chance of ripping into your paper, and you also want to make sure that your paper is completely dry. If you do this while it's wet, you also take a chance of it tearing. And I will repeat this process for the smaller cutting board. I've got to finish off the handles, and I'm going to take that color Aviary and bring that up on the front part of the handle. And I'm just going to kind of go over that paper just a little bit, you know, overlapping it a little bit, bringing that color down. It's not going to really matter too much of how it looks because we will be putting something on here to cover that up. But just in case, I still want it to look fairly decent because I am going to be selling these on one of my Whatnot auctions coming up on November 1st. If you're interested, that will also be in my description box. Now, as far as the smaller cutting board goes, I'm going to grab the color Marquee from DIY Paint, and I'm going to paint the sides. And I did this one a little different. I just wanted to kind of see if it made a difference. If I painted the sides before decoupaging or after, if it made a difference. I actually kind of like doing it after I decoupaged, but that's just me. Either way was perfectly fine. So you do you, whatever order you do it in, it'll be just fine. And I will also paint the handle and the back side. Don't forget the back side. So I made a trip to Hobby Lobby and I got lots of fabric. Okay, I'm going to start selling bows. So picked up lots of fabric, but I'm just going to make me a little raggy bow. I call it shaggy bow, but it's a rag bow. But before I put that on, I am going to seal my project with the clear liquid patina, front, back, sides, all around. And once that's dried, I'm going to grab Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in brown, and I am going to give it a little bit of aging. It doesn't really give it too much of an aging. I don't know. It finished it off. To me, it finished it off perfectly. You can skip this step if it's not your thing. And once that wax dried, here's my little shaggy bow, and I am just going to use the string and tie it on and then trim off the excess of that string. And then I'm just going to add a little wood looking button that I also get from Hobby Lobby and glue that on right in the center of our bow. And then I'm going to move on to finish up the small. And for this one, I wanted to use some greenery and these little berries I took off of a pick. This greenery I took off of a pick. Both picks were from Hobby Lobby. I'm just going to use some hot glue and glue each of the pieces of greenery down. Once that's dried, I'm just going to arrange my berries just like so. I will use the hot glue to glue those down, and then these projects will all be complete. You will have to let me know in the comment section which of these 3 projects was your favorite, and if you have a scroll saw and if you ever plan on using one. It was so much fun. I can't wait to make more wood pieces. I hope you guys will consider hitting that like button. Give me a follow. I do put out weekly videos every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Central, and I hope to see you in the comment section, and have a great week. Bye-bye.